Nationalism. The awareness of being part of a national community with shared culture, language, history, traditions, and institutions. Nationalism tends to make you more loyal to your nation rather than a monarchy or family. Speaking of nations, there weren't any, or at least there weren't any unified nations in the German and Italian majority lands. There were also nations that were subject to others, like Hungary was subject to the Austrians, and the Hungarians desired self-determination. Nationalism was tied to another movement around the same time, and that was Romanticism was a cultural movement in the mid to late 1800s. Its main ideas consisted of emotion, individualism, and nature, and it was more medieval rather than classical. Romanticism was politically linked to liberalism and, well, nationalism. Nationalism was one of the main pushing points with the revolutions of 1848. J.G. Fichte was a German philosopher. He promoted German idealism and is well known as the father of German nationalism. The Grimm brothers are best known for their German folk tales, and many of these you may know, such as Cinderella, Snow White, Rapunzel, and many more. Giuseppe Mazzini was an Italian politician who wanted to unify Italy, and he used nationalism to unify Italy. The Pan-Slavist movement was prominent in the 1800s, and they wanted all Slavic peoples to be unified under Russia. However, the South Slavic peoples in the Balkans were split between the Austrians and the Ottomans. Romanticized self-importance led to an increased view of national identity, and that would lead to racial superiority. In some areas, mainly France and Britain, Jews were granted citizenship, but in other areas of Europe, Jews faced anti-Semitism and were even blamed for the downfall of national culture. This was more prominent in Eastern Europe. Unlike the Middle Ages, Jews in the 1800s could not convert or leave their Jewish identity behind. Racial anti-Semites felt people could not be both Jews and members of a nation. In Eastern Europe, pogroms were carried out, and these were organized massacres. France, 1894. Jewish military captain Alfred Dreyfus was wrongfully convicted of treason and was sentenced to life in prison. Evidence was found that Army Major Ferdinand Walsen Esterhazy was the real culprit. Unfortunately, the army suppressed the evidence, and Esterhazy was acquitted after a 2-day trial. Dreyfus would return to France and was now sentenced 10 years, but eventually he was pardoned. Now we move east to talk about Germany, where the Christian Social Party, an anti-Semitic party, wanted to gain power. This reminds me of something. Down in Austria, Karl Lueger was elected mayor of Vienna. He was elected because of his abusive speeches towards Jews. He did help modernize Vienna, but he's still not a nice guy. He was actually the model for Hitler's Nazism. In the late 1800s, many Jews wanted to return to Palestine, which was where the ancient lands of Israel were. Zionism represented the desire for Jewish nationalism and independence. Theodor Herzl became a leading figure in Zionism. He would raise money to create settlements in the Palestine region. By 1914, the idea of Zionism became more of a dream than a reality. New conservative leaders would use nationalism to bolster their state. We got Camillo Benso, the Count of Cavour, who was an Italian politician and Prime Minister of Italy. He created tax reforms, stabilized the lira, and improved transportation systems, all to help try and unify Italy. There is also the GOAT, Otto von Bismarck. Otto was a Prussian/German politician who would help unify Germany in 1871. He would use nationalism during the Franco-Prussian War and now push the rest of the German states to unify with Prussia. So finally, you could say Germany in terms of a physical location, and it would actually make sense because now it was unified. Whoop whoop! We got the other GOAT, the nephew of Napoleon III. He was the first president of France and consolidated power as a constitutional monarch by using the army. He used state power to make France more modern and improve the social welfare of the people. He used nationalism in the Crimean War, which was an interesting fact. The Crimean War was one of the first wars to have pictures taken of it, and it showed the devastation of modern warfare to the public. Anyways, he used nationalism to fight against the Prussians in the Franco-Prussian War. but unfortunately, he lost the war and got the boot. In the Austrian Empire, the Hungarians were the largest minority group, and wanted to break away from the empire and make their own nation. They failed to realize this goal, however, but Franz Joseph, the leader of Austria, did establish a dual monarchy, and now the Austrian Emperor would be known as the Austria-Hungary. The Habsburg monarch were still the ones in control of the empire, for now. The Hungarians were given political autonomy in lawmaking and domestic issues. They created their own constitution. Now, for the questions. What cultural movement was tied to nationalism, and how does it connect to matters in Europe? For the second question, what is a significant cause of German national unification? Thank you.